Hi, we're Mel and Missy, respectfully a clinical mental health therapist and fear fighter life coach. But it goes beyond that. We are representatives of you.
Trashed It is a brand that helps women focus on their next level of freedom by getting rid of the emotional garbage in their lives, whether it's toxic relationships, thought patterns, stigmas, etc.
We represent mothers and single mothers, daughters, wives, and divorcees, business professionals, entrepreneurs, and even Christians and ministers of the gospel.
We're trashing it all.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Trashed It. I'm your girl Mel, and my girlfriend Missy is not here with me today. She's not. I'm kind of sad about it because she's out doing political things, which we absolutely support and are super excited that she's doing. So she's not with me today. It's me. But I have a wonderful guest who I'm going to let introduce herself here in just a minute because we have, oh my God, y'all, it is a topic that may make me actually clutch my pearls. It's that topic, right? It's that topic. So I'm going to let my colleague Jenifer introduce herself, and then we're going to get into this very clutch my pearls topic.
Well, thank you, Mel. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Jenifer Smith, and I am a marriage and family, mental health, and sex therapist. And I am currently in the Alexandria, Virginia area practicing, but I do workshops online, in person, do all types of workshops. So anything from orgasm to masturbation to just how to give a good blowjob or how to please your partner. So
see, I'm clutching my pearls already.
We got to normalize it, right? We got to normalize. We all want to be pleasured.
Right. So usually there's at the very beginning of the show, I'll usually ask Missy, so what are we trashing today? Right. And since she's not here, I'll just go ahead and say what we're trashing is this thought that women aren't supposed to talk about sex, that that it's very taboo, that there's something wrong if we're talking about sex. Usually it comes with people, thinking lowly of us sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're trashing tonight. And before we kind of get into that, I absolutely want to give kudos because for those that don't know, Jenifer was on an episode of Love and Marriage DC, which is one of my favorite reality shows. And I remember when you had something, I think, on your social media, and I thought, oh my gosh, I know her. Oh, this is so dope. And so when I was watching the show, I was like, yes. And I thought, wow, this is such a taboo subject, because even in watching the show that night, I was like, oh my God,
We're gonna just put it right out there.
She has that product out there too. But so what was it like being on the show? Let's get that out there first. What was it like being on the show?
One, let me just say how nerve-wracking it was to sit on it as a secret for like 4 months. Mm-hmm. I was like, this, I'm not very good at keeping secrets, and this was a big one. Mm-hmm. I was under NDA, so I couldn't say anything to anybody. And it's the Oprah Winfrey Network, right? So I freaked out, I geeked out for a moment. But the filming day is pretty interesting because I was sequestered. So I really didn't know anything that was happening earlier in the day, like with them on the bus. I didn't know anything about that. Literally, I actually knew Winter. We met years ago at a conference and, just became acquaintances and colleagues. And, we saw each other from time to time at different therapeutic events. And then she was the one that gave me this opportunity and said, "Hey, I think we need a sex therapist. Would you be interested in doing a workshop?" And I was like, yeah, I would. That would be amazing.
That
So
is
the day of filming, yeah, I just kind of walked in, and it's not my typical setup though, like typically I already have all my stuff set up and then people come into the room. So it was a little bit out of my element actually. Yeah, setting it all up as people are already there, making comments, right? I don't watch reality TV that much, so I didn't know any of the people, so I really didn't know their backgrounds. And that's why I wanted to do like an introduction. And it is kind of nerve-wracking because there's like 4 cameras on the other side of what you all are seeing, and they're like, "Just act natural," and I'm like, "This is not natural. This is not natural." It's very weird, actually, but it was a good experience. I'm really glad I did it. It's way out of my comfort zone, so I'm really glad I did it, and I'm really thankful for how vulnerable the couples were with me. I felt like Chris's story of sharing what it was like as a Black boy, he's watching porn as a young kid and nobody really explaining it to you. And now as an adult, nobody's still explaining it, and it's like people feel like sex education has to stop because you're an adult, and that's not the case. And so I was really appreciative for some of those beautiful moments that came out of, like my 10 minutes of being on TV that might have helped somebody else. And that's one of the reasons really why I did it.
Right, right. And I know, even as we were talking before we started the show with Trashed It, what we tend to do and what we always are after is trashing the stigmas, right? Trashing those things that, especially for women, as Black women, as women of color, that we are often challenged with. And I think sex is a huge one. And I know there are probably going to be quite a few that will either watch this or listen to it and think, "Oh my gosh, what are they talking about?" That, right? But that's what we champion on Trashed It. So as we get into it and we talk about just this double standard, do you think, number one, there's a double standard when it comes to talking about sex, being sexual even?
Oh, definitely. I definitely think there's a double standard. I think society has set it up like that for a long time. And I think that when society has set it up like that, it translates into the parenting factor. Because a lot of the couples or individuals that I meet for therapy, their sex education started at home, or even lack thereof, the sex education at home or in school. And so, it's like society gave you this picture of what sex should look like. Boys and men should be playboys. And if women are promiscuous, they're sluts and whores. Right. And then, so that's what gets taught to you at home of like, well, you can't have sex with multiple people. That would just be dirty. But your brother can, and as long as he's using protection, it's okay. Like that just makes zero sense. I definitely think there's huge double standard when it comes to that, but I love the space that we're in now where it is becoming more not of a double standard. Women are encouraged, when I think of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and like what they did with WAP, I was like, this was a song that women have been waiting years to be able to just bust out and sing and like have that freedom and not feel guilt or shame about it, and like even Little Kim, coming out long ago and doing all these songs that just was like, I don't care. I could do whatever I want.
She was considered a bad girl back in the day, though.
Exactly. But now, I mean, look at what she's done to open the doors for other people, right? But I grew up in the Little Kim era. So for me, like I can remember just hearing, I was like, oh my gosh, she's talking about sucking dick on a record? Like, whoa, I've never heard those words before. And I was just like, but again, like it makes you curious. And it's like, wow, she can just walk around in a bikini and a fur coat. And it's cool. Like, I like it. Like I think women started breaking the doors down a while ago, but I love the space that we're in now where it's more normalized and people really don't have that much to say about it because they're like, I mean, y'all been waiting to say this shit for a long time and you deserve to be able to live however you want to live and do whatever you want with your body.
Right, right. I remember growing up and, like you were saying, we are initially taught about sex just in childhood, right? And I can still remember to this day my mom saying, you just don't do it until you're married, right? Like that was the conversation. That
Wow.
was it. There was no ifs, ands, buts about it. And I think for so many of us, especially those of us who say grew up in church or just, in maybe stricter environments, um, it really came across as this, ooh, we don't talk about it, we don't discuss it,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't even know, like, oh my God, it can be amazing,
Yeah.
right? There's no conversation about that,
No, no, there's
right?
not. No, there's never a conversation about that. I always say there's 5 things that they never talk to you about in sex education: pleasure, orgasms, masturbation, oral sex, anal. None
Mm,
of those are ever covered in sex education.
mhm.
Why not?
Hmm.
Why not?
I never thought about that. Never
Yeah.
thought about that.
They never talk about the pleasure aspect. They talk about the reproduction.
That's true. That's true. You know what? I never even thought about that,
Mm-hmm.
to be quite honest.
So
Um,
so as we grow up to be adults, where would you learn? When would you learn? Right? Unless you're
right.
actively seeking out that information to study it, to understand it. Most people's first tool is porn,
Mhm.
which porn can be really helpful in some ways, but it's not for everybody. And that's it. It's only visual. It's not really breaking it down and teaching you about how to be a lover.
Mhm. Right.
And that I think is a big component that we miss as adults, is like really learning how to be a lover to somebody, helping actually pleasure your partner and teaching them how to pleasure you.
Mhm. So I think as a relationship therapist and
Mhm.
coach, what some people may not realize is just how often, even in counseling couples,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes the issue is not just the intimacy part, but sometimes there are challenges that come up when it's about sex or
Mhm.
about the pleasure within sex. Um, how often do you see people that willingly come to you for sex therapy?
Most of the time I would say they're willing. It's interesting. In my career, I've had more men come to sex therapy than women.
That's crazy. Really?
I've had more men come, and usually it's been the man that's actually initiated couples therapy. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's interesting to me that that was kind of the narrative, because I never thought it was going to be that way. But by the time they come see me, they are like at the last resort of, we need to figure this out, or we may not make it. We might break up. So they're willing to put themselves out there, because they might have tried a lot of different things. And they're like, all right, so if it's going to take me talking to you to figure this out, then I'm willing to do it. And it's interesting because I've had a lot of males that have come to therapy for, and initially like by themselves, and I'm like, we need to involve your partner at some point, because you want to have sex with them,
Right.
we're going to talk with them.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's the women that are the ones that are withholding sex as a punishment,
Mm-hmm.
or like a way to manipulate the situation. And that always makes me really disappointed to
Mm-hmm.
see that women are still doing that.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
um
all the time.
all the time.
Uh-huh.
And I really try to break down, and a lot of, I would say 90% of the time, it's because of what they learned in childhood or what they learned at church.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yep.
the reason why they do what they do to their partners now.
Mhm. So for those that may not even understand what sex therapy is, right?
Yeah.
Let's maybe explain that because
Hmm.
even say if someone comes to me for couples counseling, right?
Yes.
I understand that, if we're going more in depth with where they are intimately,
Hmm.
I'm going to refer them to a sex therapist, right? Someone that's talking to them about what your bedroom life is like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Explain to people what sex therapy really is.
Yeah, so sex therapy is a good question. A lot of people don't really know, but sex therapy is ultimately a big umbrella for something specific. And people automatically think, oh, sex therapy, it has to be about sex, and no, it doesn't. It's really about like intimacy.
Mhm.
It can be sex related, but Could be because you're having issues with your genitals. It could be because you've had some type of sexual trauma in the past and now you're trying to work on having a healthy sex life with somebody. And then I have the flip side of it. I have people that are, living polyamorous lifestyles, and that takes a lot of work and coordination when you have multiple partners in one relationship and you're trying to work on placing everyone's intimacy, and that can be a lot, or just even the communication aspect to be intimate. And then, people are in BDSM and kink and things like that. So some sex therapy is a big umbrella, but each person will have their own specific areas that they like to work with or work on. So, if you want to see a sex therapist, I encourage you to look some up, see what works for you. Take the advantage of doing like a free 15-minute, 20-minute consultation to see if that person is going to be a good fit for you. You will not hurt their feelings if they're not. But I definitely encourage people, if you're looking for a sex therapist, make sure you do the consultation and make sure that that person's a good fit for you and they understand what you're looking for in a therapist and with that specific issue.
When do you think it's time for, in a relationship, right? Or, well, let me back up. Do you always get couples or people that are in relationships, or do you sometimes get singles who work out things sexually?
It's like 50-50. Like I definitely get singles, or maybe like the recently singled, over the course of the pandemic, I've had a lot of people who got divorced. They had been married to somebody for a long time. And most of the time when people are, just getting out of a divorce, they might have not been intimate with that person for the last year or two. So, now they're kind of like, all right, I'm trying to figure out how to get back out there, but got lots of questions and quirks about like what it is to have sex with somebody new for the first time in a long time. So there's some sex coaching involved, but also talking about like, what do they want intimacy to look like now with someone new versus how it looked like with someone you were married to, right? It's a little different. And so, so I do see that a lot with my singles, with couples. Again, because of the pandemic, people just kind of felt like they were hitting a wall sexually of what can we do now? How do I talk to my partner about something I want to participate in that I know that they may be resistant to, how to bridge conversations. People want to explore and try some new stuff.
Yeah, I've honestly had that come up quite a few times. Just with couples in therapy, where one partner may want to try something different. And I think because of the way in which they approach it, it's an automatic like, no, are you crazy? I would never do that, right? So you're saying you help them also have the verbiage to have those conversations.
Yeah, and I like to break it down a little bit of, so tell me about like, what's your thoughts about what they asked? And like, what's your thoughts about that act or that toy or that party or whatever that they want to, want to participate in, and get some more background. A lot of times I find that, in sex therapy with couples, they don't go there. They don't ask those questions. Like, it's so like, therapy is the safe space to ask those questions that you didn't feel safe asking outside. But I'm asking, I'm like, so you said that you didn't want to be tied up. Is there any reason why you don't want to be tied up? And it's like, they're like, oh yeah, because I was assaulted 10 years ago. And the partner's like, you never told me that. And the partner's like, you never asked me. And I'm like, okay, guys, now we have something more here that it's a little more deeper than just, I'm just rejecting the idea. There's something else behind it. So I really do try to help people unpack what are some of their resistance to try new things. And sometimes it is more simple of like, I just don't like it. I saw it on a porn. It looked nasty. I'm like, would you be willing to at least try something else that's like, not quite that, but, it kind of simulates that or something like that? Or would you, what else would you be willing to try that you would feel comfortable with? Like asking, where could we meet in the middle on certain things?
When it comes to definitely women who have had trauma, right? Especially sexual trauma, what are some things you're able to say to them that help them start to look at sex in more of a healthy or more of a positive way? Because I get that a lot as well.
Yeah. So this is a two-part answer for me. So First part, I usually ask them, have they actually processed that trauma at some point? Because I don't like to encourage them to do anything if they haven't really actually processed that trauma. Because I feel like it will still be a reoccurring thing that's going to come up. So I asked them if they've actually worked on it. If they've worked on it, then I'm like, okay, so let's talk about like what you'd be willing to try in this relationship, or what would make you feel safe, or what do you feel curious about, and so we might toss around some different ideas or toys, or some type of kink play, or maybe even going to some of these workshops where they just educate you on different types of kinks or different things to try. So I might just like encourage, I always go with the workshops first because it's a safe approach. You get lots of information, and then it's more like it's a conversation. You're going to go home and talk about it, and for a couple of days, maybe, and then come back to session and let's talk about like what you felt safe with. So I definitely encourage them to be open. And if they're willing to, if they want to be with this person, intimately, then I really encourage them to be open, but also really listen to what their partner's needs are as well. And because I find that some people are just like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm like, I get that, and that's fine, but listen to your partner and see what else what they're desiring, like, are you willing to at least find a way to help them reach where they desire?
Do you find that women are, because again, in thinking about the fact that usually men are the ones that are coming to you, right? And women, we're the ones that are more so not so open to have the conversation, not, we're the ones who are withholding.
Yeah.
You see that women, once they get to you, right? And once they're having a conversation with you, do you find that women are more open to explore, or do you find that it's men?
I do find that men are more open to explore, but that's also because society has normalized it for them.
Yeah.
Women, it's not been as normalized. It's like, you could do that, but don't tell nobody. Like, it's still like,
like, what is it? Lady in the streets and a freak in the
sheets.
sheets.
Yeah. It's still like not normalized, and even amongst girlfriends, like like there's been plenty of times that I've had women in workshops and they're like, oh, I can't tell my friends, about, the nasty stuff that I want to do to my husband because they're going to think I'm nasty. And I'm like, wait, what? And then I find out that women are like shaming other women in group chats or during a girls' night based on something that you're doing to pleasure your partner. And I'm like, that's not for anyone else to make opinions about, like if that's what you and your partner want to do and you both consented and both enjoyed it, more power to you.
Right.
And I think that there's just like not enough encouragement or normalizing going on for women to be open to trying new things or doing new things. But again, that wasn't part of the sex education conversation. It just wasn't. Men have always been encouraged to masturbate, or to go out and sleep with women or go to a strip club or go to an escort. Like they've always been encouraged to be sexually free. Women have always been repressed. So it's I feel like there's still some stigmas there that we're trying to work through with getting women to just see that it's normal. And you can have desires and you can be as nasty as you want. Whatever. Like,
say it louder for the people in the back.
You can be as nasty as you want whenever you want. Okay. I want women to know that because you're free. You're free to do that. But I wanted to go back to your question about trauma. Because you said like, a lot of women have trauma, but I'm going to say, I want people to hear me that men have sexual trauma too. And they very rarely have a space to talk about it. Like very rarely. And I've always felt very, very fortunate when I've had male clients that came in to talk about their sexual trauma because they felt safe to. But there is a lot of men that do. And again, when in sexual conversations with partners, I think it's good for both partners to ask, do you have any sexual traumas that I should know about? Just phrase it very open, settle, like very subtle. And whether they choose to share or not, that's up to them. But at least you ask the question, because I do find that when my male clients have been resistant to something the woman is initiating, then the woman shames the men about not wanting to do something.
Wow.
Without knowing his sexual trauma.
Right. So speaking of, when we talk about sex shaming, what really comes to mind for you?
When I think of sex shaming, I think of people putting a sexual partner down for a multitude of reasons. And it's really, they're doing it for their own advantage to feel good about it, or to guilt trip somebody in doing a sexual act.
Do you think we see that often?
Definitely. I was like blown away at how much I found out that women were sex shaming each other in just friend circles.
Right. That's the crazy thing, right? Because it's us. Y'all, it really is. It is us.
Yeah.
So like, it's almost as if we are keeping ourselves bound. Based on these belief systems that we've grown up in. And it's as if there's no room to grow, no room to be free, and no room to just even have that type truth with your girlfriends. Right. Like, it's one thing for guys to sex shame, maybe, but what we're saying and what I hear you saying is it's usually us.
It's usually the Black women. It's usually the women of color. I will say that the white women are definitely praising each other and doing and encouraging them to be as nasty as they want with their partner. They are encouraging. It's the Black women that are really the ones that are not.
We grew up so different.
The church was a big part.
Absolutely.
And even for Hispanic women or for Caribbean women, they all, most of them grew up like Catholic. And so like those, and it's a lot of requirements in that religion, right? That's limiting on what you can do, or even talk about.
Right.
Like they may be having lots of sex, but they are not
talking about it.
No.
At all.
No. And it's unfortunate that we've had these constraints, right? Like put on multiple generations to not talk about it or to shame another person about what they're doing, And so like, I think about it from the perspective of when you go to someone's wedding, and they ask the audience, like, do you support them? Will you help them? Like when they do that part of the service and you say, I do, or I will, right, support this couple up there, I take that very seriously. And that covers all bases of the marriage. I'm going to be there and support you. So if as your friend and I'm asking how y'all doing, I'm also going to ask, like, how's the sex going? Like, how's your sex life going? Or how's your intimate relationship going?
I think we're so one-dimensional with it, right?
Yeah.
I think for so many of us, we've grown up with this picture of, and I'm guilty of it as well, coming from this very Christian background and all the things, we have been taught that marriage is this, right?
Yeah.
And it is only this.
Yeah.
So when we're taught that it's within these confines, it's right here. It's this narrow path. It doesn't lend itself to anything you're talking about.
Right.
And so when we hear, I think maybe girlfriends who are more willing to be sexually open, or they want to experience something different, many women, I think, are thinking, oh, wait a minute, you're in this relationship, it's supposed to be this. Without this, we're very rigid in our thoughts about it. And I think a lot of times that plays a part into how our sex lives, how they dwindle over time.
Exactly. Who's going to ask you about it? Right? Like, who's going to ask you about it besides your partner? Like, y'all in it together, but right? Like, because I can still remember, I had a very different upbringing when it came to sex education. I was like very informed early, and I was surrounded by lots of married women. So like, I can still remember them getting together and having lingerie parties at the house. You know what I mean? Like encouraging, like, yeah, girl, you get this one with the cords that like, that was part of their support for one another. You know what I mean? And then we quickly moved into, right, like the Tupperware era and like Avon and shit like that. You know what I mean? It's like, wait, how we get away from the lingerie parties? Like,
Mhm.
you know, and like now I do get excited when I hear people talking about still having like toy parties and things like
Mhm.
that. But that's not happening as frequent as it once
And
was.
if you go, you want it to be a secret.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, girl, you married. Who cares? Like you married or you with this person or you're just a sexual being and that's okay.
How do you think, those of us who are younger, right? Because I do
Mhm.
think it has to do also with just the generations.
Yeah.
And our older generations, of course, they taught us, that you don't present yourself as this sexual being. You don't do that. So
Yeah.
as we try to step away from those stigmas, how do you suggest we do that?
I've really tried to like normalize it. I could be a sexual being fully clothed, makeup off, glasses on. Like I could still be a sexual being
Mhm.
no matter what I got on,
Mhm.
or how I present myself.
Mhm.
So, I think that narrative like was attached to like dressing more provocative or, like going out in a short skirt or something like that, or wearing high heels and a short skirt. But it's like you could be sexual, you could present sexual in anything that you're wearing.
Mhm.
And that's okay. I
Mhm.
think that we have to normalize that it's okay to be who you are and feel
Mhm.
comfortable in your skin. I am definitely that person that's on the street like, girl, you do that, you wear that. Like I am definitely that person because we've been repressed for way too long.
We
We
absolutely have.
deserve to celebrate each other and celebrate ourselves.
Mhm.
Like there's no reason not to.
Right. I remember hearing, and I'm still tickled because I remember hearing Jasmine Sullivan's Hotels for the first time. And I'm listening to it and I'm torn, right? Because this one part of me is like, oh my God, this is dope. And I'm listening to the songs and thinking, I've been in almost every one of these situations. Right. And then on the other hand, I'm thinking, this is terrible. This is so like I really want to talk about this and have this conversation of
Yeah.
how I enjoy this entire album and how it
Right.
is so true to who most of us as women have been at some point in time. But I
Yeah.
was so torn at the time with, hmm, the church would crucify me for this one. Right.
Listen, the way I think about church people is there are those who do it out in public and those who do it out in private.
That's true.
Because there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened at the church, and you have seen some people do some not Christian things at the church. And
That's
I'm
true.
like, at least I'm out here honest about mine because God gonna see it. God already see it when you do it in private. So really,
Right.
you're not really hiding anything, right?
Right.
Um, but also if people only really read the Bible and knew how much sex was in it,
That part.
a whole bunch.
Right. That part.
Actually, in my sex therapy training, we spent like 2 weeks on sex in the Bible. We watched a documentary, we went through the Bible, like broke it down. So I'm like, come on, people, like do your research.
Right. See, I love that. I love that. So as we get ready to wrap up, what is some advice you would give to women
Mhm.
who are looking to kind of break out of the sex shame shell, or that
Yeah.
clutching my pearls and oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about this. What's some advice you would give us?
I would I would give you all the permission to be sexy and vulnerable and curious and just really like open to anything that you want this experience to be because it is an experience and it's a journey.
Mhm.
And like you already have thoughts and feelings about things you're curious about or something that you would be interested in trying or or how you would want your body to respond to something, right? And
Mhm.
so I asked you to be open because there's a lot of different kinds of workshops to attend, virtually or in person,
Mhm.
documentaries to watch, books to read. There's lots of different ways to educate yourself. And so I really always encourage people to educate themselves about anything that they're willing to try, even if it's a toy.
Okay.
You can well, I do toy reviews, and I'm still going to be doing some more this year, but like you can go on and look at the reviews, or or read up on it, or like consult a sex therapist to go over it, or get a sex coach or things like that. Like there's a lot of resources out here now. So I just encourage you to be a student to
Mhm.
sex and really be open to learning and being receptive to some new knowledge that is going to help pleasure you.
So speaking of toys, for those who are naughty that are listening, what would you say are some of your favorites or some that you would recommend?
Some of my favorite toys, I have them all like in another room,
Mhm.
but one of my favorite toys is it's like a vibrator that goes in your panties,
Ooh.
and it has a remote to it. It has like a handheld remote, and then it has a Bluetooth remote on your phone. That's very fun for a date night.
Mhm.
You give your partner all control to turn it up or turn it down or change the
Mhm.
patterns. It could be a very fun evening. I also recommend that for maybe couples that are working from home. It could be a very fun time.
Oh, that would be. That would.
You
Listen,
want a
sitting in
Zoom
a Zoom
call
meeting.
trying to hold it together, right? You want a Zoom call trying to hold it together. But that could be really fun. It's like good long foreplay.
Okay.
So that's like one of my favorites. When I was on the show, actually took like 20 toys, but they only showed two.
Uh-huh.
And they told me to bring a bunch, and I knew that some would probably be edited out. But
Mhm.
one of the ones I brought with me today is a glass dildo, and I actually had this one on the show.
Mhm.
People don't seem to really hear a lot about glass dildos, but
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And they obviously have different grooves. So
Mhm.
typically people will put these in the freezer and then use them for penetration. And I remember a couple of people on the show were like, "Wait, I don't know that I want something that cold in my vagina," but
In
it's
theory,
all
yeah.
it's all about the temperature sensation.
Okay.
And
Girl, you
because
better teach the people. Come
yeah,
on.
it's all about temperature sensation. And
Okay.
like for us, like our vaginas are just like like they're little warm pots. So it's like putting something this cold in there, it
Mhm.
actually doesn't feel as cold as what people would think. Because there's so many layers, right, to the vulva. But the grooves feel really, really good when
Mhm.
they're going in and out. So I do love glass dildos. And so I had this one on Love and Marriage.
Mhm.
So that's a familiar one. This one is actually a really good beginners vibrator. I always recommend this one. You can like find it on Amazon. I can't remember the name of it, but you can find it on Amazon. And it's very small, but it has 10 different speeds.
Okay.
And you can charge it with just a cord. It's perfect to pack
Why
on
my
like
mama will not be watching this episode. I already know
I
that.
hope
Go
mom
ahead.
is watching. Hey mom. I hope mom is watching because you know what? Mom still deserves to be pleasured too. Don't matter how old she is, mom still deserves to be pleasured too. But it has like 10 different speeds. It's great
Mhm.
to pack it, take it on vacation. You can carry
Mhm.
this around in your purse. And you can use this by yourself or with a partner. And
Gotcha.
one of the special tips I give, I do teach a blowjob class. You can take this, put it on the side of your cheek during a blowjob, and then it feels like your mouth is a vibrator on top of his penis. Yeah, so you look like a real professional out here. Yeah.
Oh, oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
So those are my recommendations. I also recommend one of the things I find that Black women don't also talk about, or Black men for that matter, don't talk about lubricant enough. And I
Okay.
always encourage people to use lubricant because I know the porn makes saliva and spitting look desirable, and some people really like it, but it holds so much bacteria, which is
Mhm.
bad for
Mhm.
a woman's vagina. It just holds the bacteria, and that's how we get yeast infections, and the pH balance is off, and all those things.
Mhm.
So lubricant is much better for your vagina, and it's really good for oral as well.
Mhm.
So I recommend Wicked. which is a vegan lubricant. And so it's good to go from oral to penetration. So they have like 12 or like 15 different flavors. They're all really good. And they're really safe for anybody to use since they're vegan based.
Wow. You know what? So this has been not just enlightening, but I think I may have to order a few things. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much, Jen, for agreeing to come on and chat for a bit. So before you leave, make sure that you how can people get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you and how can they follow you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a while, so I appreciate you. So you can find me on Instagram at sextherapistjen, or you can email me at sextherapistjen@gmail.com. If you're interested in booking a workshop, a session if you're in the Virginia area, or just even a consultation. And I'm also Sex Therapist Jen on Twitter as well. So.
Okay. Now, do you travel for workshops?
I do, if the money is right.
I heard that if the money is right.
If the money is right, I will travel.
I heard that. All right. So thank you so much for being with us. And guys, that is it. Make sure that if you are not following already, that you do follow us on social media on both Facebook and Instagram. You can follow us at We Trashed It on both platforms. If you're interested in being on the show, you can email us at wetrashedit@gmail.com. So make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and until next time, we'll see ya. See ya.
Bye.